I've got 65 more miles, 500 calories per hour. He was putting down 120 grams of carbs per hour.
And then it opens up a whole new door.
And 450 miles without ever more than a 5-minute break. It's just like
dangerous.
so far beyond anything I'd ever done. I did the last 70 miles on less than 2,000 calories.
Going to run?
Like, I have 60 miles to go.
This was crazy.
After that, I just fell on the ground. 40 people just step over me.
What?
David Goggins side. Was this even possible for me?
You just have to start.
Yeah.
2, 1, rolling. Hello guys, welcome back again to a new episode at Premium Podcast. Today we have with us Eli. Eli, how's it going, man?
Good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing very good. Right, so I met Eli here at the library and I was like, hey man, how's it going? We just started talking and then I realized he has some pretty cool stuff to talk about. And then I was like, man, you need to be at the podcast and I need you to speak about this stuff. So Eli, can you give us a bit of a small introduction about yourself?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, and it was a pleasure meeting you. I can tell you're doing some big things, so I'm excited to be part of it. And we're both interested in fitness, maybe in different sides of that coin. And be a little background about who I am.
Yeah.
So I'm 46 and the father of a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old.
Nice.
And I guess I could start. Born in California, moved to Vermont right when I was 2, was in Vermont until I was 13, went to Florida, which I was there for high school, and I was not a Florida person. I grew up skiing, like I wanted to ski. And so I got out of there as soon as high school ended and knew I wanted to come to New England somewhere. So looked around up here, and both Dartmouth, sorry if I'm kicking this thing. I'm just
No, you're good. You're good.
Dartmouth and Middlebury both had their own ski areas.
Yeah.
So I was like, that sounds cool. And, 25 years ago, I didn't have to be quite as top of the class as you guys have to be these days. But anyways, decided to come up here to Dartmouth, and I was a class of 2000. So came up here, ran a little bit of cross country, was never really that good. Did track for a year, dabbled in a bunch of stuff. I was never a great athlete. I was really much more academics, but I've always been sort of like lean and, I guess, when you're younger, you don't have the opportunity to really test your endurance very much. It's mostly about speed. And I'm not fast, I'm never going to I'd be lucky if I could break a 5-minute mile, let alone a 4-minute mile. So, so I didn't think much about running, but my father ran every single day through my whole life, Didn't race very much, but would just always go out there and was a part of his life. And I didn't really think too much about it, but it was always there, And so fast forward to Dartmouth, and I did ski team for my first 3 years here. And then just basically, to make a long story short, I sort of discovered the Appalachian Trail on my freshman trip, met a few thru hikers on that.
This trail is the one who goes from where to where?
It goes from Georgia
to Maine. Wow!
So it's a national scenic trail. So it's basically like
how many miles is that?
It's like 2,180 something like that.
Nice.
So on my first year trip, we met some thru hikers. Some people had walked there from Georgia, and they were up here in New Hampshire.
Wow.
And when you're here over your summer, if you end up doing that, you will meet a number of thru hikers. They all come through town. The Appalachian Trail comes right through the middle of Hanover. It's one of the few towns on the AT. So I met some thru hikers there. Fast forward to the next year, ended up through various things deciding to spend a month on the Appalachian Trail. So I went home, worked for a couple months, came up and just went down to the bottom of Vermont and followed the AT through Vermont and through New Hampshire and sort of really got into hiking.
Yeah.
After college, so I got into that. I did the 50 here, which is like a challenge, to go to Moosilauke, or I guess now they actually come from Moosilauke.
It's a 50-mile hike, straight, nonstop, right?
Yep. It's a Dartmouth tradition they've been doing for years and years.
Yeah.
Used to go from Hanover, from Robinson Hall to the Moosilauke Ravine Lodge up over Mount Moosilauke.
Wow.
And now it goes the opposite direction. But anyways, classic thing. But just, started to get into hiking. After college, I ran the Moose Lock Ravine Lodge as a manager for a number of years. And that's when I started to really get into hiking. I did the 4,000 footers. And it's also, and these two things are very intertwined, it's also where I first picked up a camera, So after college, my friend, I'm a class of 2000, my friend's a 97, and he was managing with me, and we decided, let's just go to New Zealand. So I bought a camera for that trip, and Moose Lock was like a 6-month gig. So after the end of the season, early November, I was sort of free. So we decided to go to New Zealand, just did it on the cheap, bought a car when we got there and sold it when we were done. Buy it for 500, sell for 500. And back then, it was super easy. You could stay at the hostels, but you could camp out in their front yard. So use their kitchen. It was like $8 a night. So we did that, did a lot of hiking, and that's when I fell in love with photography. And so sort of the hiking and the photography
just came together,
nice. And that's when I sort of got in my head, I wonder if there's any way to make a living doing photography. And so I decided that, so after Moose Lock, did that through to about 2002. And then I worked at a consulting firm, did market research stuff for about 4 years, all up here in the Upper Valley, while I was learning photography, sort of
nice.
Get my chops. And I was working on a book about Mount Moose Lock, sort of in the back of my head. And then I quit my job in 2007 and just spent the year working on that book. Wow. And I also did a bunch of sort of how-to guides for this other publishing company called Globe Pequot, who I still work with right now. And we did everything from we wouldn't do any of the writing, but me and this other photographer, we would everything from kayaking and car camping and backpacking to chess and bridge and how to raise puppies and do dog tricks and stuff. And it was pretty funny. I had this one, the one and last of the dog trick is how to get your dog to get something from the fridge. So I set it all up and put peanut butter up
That's
there
interesting.
and had him opening the fridge door and everything.
Wow.
Anyway, so moving on, got really into hiking, got really into photography. Those two things sort of combined. And then just kept on sort of hiking more, and I started writing hiking guidebooks. My first hiking guidebook was in 2011 for Falcon Guides. And it was this love of photography that found me in 2015 hiking in the High Sierra. We were doing what's called the Southern Sierra High Route, and a lot of the routes I've liked to hike are sort of off trail. So they're especially out west when you have line of sight. So, there's no trees in the way. You can just sort of be I'm going there.
Yeah.
And just walk there.
Yeah, straight.
And so we got into some backcountry routes, which were really fun. And I was 2015,
How old were you?
30, I'm 46. Did I say 47? I'm 46 now, and I was 37 then.
Oh, so
older. I had done the Covered Bridges half marathon. I had done a couple local races and would run for a couple weeks, and you know what I mean, but never But I was I'm going to take this fitness, and I'm going to run the Vermont 50K, which is right in my town. And that was so I took that fitness, trained, quote unquote trained. I had no idea what I was doing. Just went out there and ran.
Did you had supplies, logistics, anyone helping you, stations?
For the race, yes, but for the training, it was just learning it. But for the race, yeah, it's all set up. There's aid stations everywhere. I mean, it's an awesome. It's actually the race director was the head of the Dartmouth Outing Club outdoor rentals here for 30 years or something. He just retired, but so did that and was doing awesome, running normal, then just hit the wall, just crashed and burned. And I think it took me an hour and a half to do the last 2 miles.
Wow.
I was crawling, you know what I mean? But I discovered something. I like that feeling. I like that feeling of digging deep and hitting the wall and can you go past it? What are you made of? Discovering more about yourself by using, your physical constraints to do that. So So anyways, that's when I got into ultra running, and that was 2015.
This is super interesting to me because you're an ultramarathon runner, right? Can you tell us how many? I find this like so funny. It's like you're not a normal human being, you're just like a beast. And you're talking about you love that feeling. And I think many ultramarathon runners, when they're running, when they're through the race, there's some sort of pain that when this physical pain just disappears, there's something that keeps you dragging you back. Like, I want to do this again. I want to feel that pain again. So can you just talk more about that and just tell me more about the bigger races that you've done and
Sure.
the
Well, there's
crazy shit.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. There's sort of both sides of that thing. There's like I just finished this race. Now I can't get off the couch. I'm never doing that again. The next morning you're signing up for the next race. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So it's like as soon as the extreme physical pain subsides, you want to try that again. And just like with anything, right? You want to do better.
Yeah.
And initially when you start this stuff, it's just about finishing, and then eventually you start to care about your performance. There's also the fact, and I think this is what I love about ultra running, is, you think you've hit your limit in the middle of a race. In the middle of a race, let's say like a 100-miler, for example, your longest long run might be 25 miles, right? Like it's a long Saturday. You go out for, 4 hours, 5 hours.
Yeah.
And then you're at mile 35 and you're already 10 miles past your longest long run. And like you start to cramp and you start to get nauseous. And like it's easy to go down the road of thinking, I've got 65 more miles to go. Like if I feel this bad now, how can I only not feel worse 5 hours later, right? Like,
what do you do when you have this thought?
So early on, you just sort of go down this rabbit hole and you try to push through, and maybe you don't know there's another side. But the more you run this stuff, the more you realize there's always another side to this. And so you might often feel the worst you feel the whole race at mile 30. You might feel incredible at mile 50. You might feel like you're going to die at mile 70. You might run your fastest mile at 95.
Wow.
It's absolutely insane what the body can do. Like once you get past sort of your normal physical constraints, you stop paying attention to heart rate. You stop paying attention to everything. You just listen to your body and you just go and you just try to eat as much as you possibly can.
During the race or before the race?
During the race. The people that win are the people that eat the most.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
In fact, I'm just listening to this podcast on this way up. This guy just won Leadville this year, and then he won Javelina 100 last weekend. He ran 100 miles in like 12:45. So that's like a 7:10 pace on trail in desert for 100 miles.
Wow.
He was putting down 120 grams of carbs per hour, 500 calories per hour.
How was he running? I mean, like I eat and I just like move like for 5 minutes and feel like I'm gonna throw up.
Gels and drink, and he trains himself to eat. So like he goes out and forces himself, like he'll down a quart of sports drink before even going out for a 5-mile run, and he'll put down the calories. And you train your body to absorb those calories. And that's with everything in ultra running, right? It's just like training your body to understand like how it feels on your muscles and your bones, and same thing with recovery. Like it used to take me 2-3 weeks to even be walking normal, and now I can go into work the next day if I got to. Then as far as the experience is concerned, like which races I've done, so I started.
How did when was your first ultramarathon?
First was 2015. It was that Vermont 50K. And an ultramarathon, just for those that don't know, is basically anything longer than a marathon. So typically, 50K is like the shortest ultra there is. The difference is that most marathons are run on pavement and roads, whereas most ultras, a lot of ultras, are run on trail.
Trials or track?
Trail.
Trail.
So, for example, that 50K had like 7,000 feet of climbing. So it takes a lot longer. So it's only 5 miles longer than a marathon, but it might take, twice as long because it's on trail and there's so much climbing.
Wow.
So that was 2015, and then just started doing, I think I did a 50-miler later that year.
Yeah.
And then I signed up for my first 100-miler in the fall of 2016 called the Grindstone 100.
100-miler.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about I remember we had a conversation about how the signing up and all the stuff, like not everybody gets to run this, even if you want to.
Well, this one, so most races you can just sign up. There's a few like big ones, right? Just like you could run your local 5K, or there's like the 5K World Championships. No big deal. But that one, Grindstone, and also I should say ultra running is becoming much more popular in the last 10 years, like much more competitive. It used to be the people with the experience that won, and now it's like fit Division I athletes that are running sub 4-minute miles that are like now running 12-hour hundreds.
I watched a video of like a woman talking about running 500 miles, which is like insane. It's like, you guys would be dead. It's like insane.
Yeah.
It's like people now are like getting to understand more that, hey, I can do this. People can do this. Because when someone just does it, then you look at it and you go, hey, if he can do it, why can't I?
Exactly.
It's just like,
totally.
I want to do it.
And there are regular people out there. All of us, we're just regular people. And the longer, and I think that's sort of like, you sort of introduced me thinking like, oh, like this is like superhuman or whatever. But truthfully, we're just regular runners. And the longer the race, the slower you can go. And this sort of brings me back to sort of originally why I got into it was like, this was a way to sort of be a hiker and a runner at the same time,
Nice.
In a 100-miler, most likely even the winner is not running 100 miles.
Yeah.
They might be running 90. And the people in the top 10 might be running 80. And, someone like me might be running 50 miles, right? We might, every time there's a hill, I might just start hiking. You know what I mean? Because it's all about preserving yourself for the future.
Yeah.
And so it really does benefit people that can like be steady paced and consistent, and they're not fast, but they don't slow down.
Yeah, they don't stop.
Yeah, they don't
Is
stop.
it that, like, this is the thing about ultramarathons, that you don't stop. You just keep moving no matter how slow it is. Is that a thing, or you stop sometimes?
Well, there's aid stations. So like depending on the race, it's just every, in a 100-miler, there could be 15 aid stations. So at those aid stations, some of which are crude and they might have like soup and mashed potatoes, and some of which are just, you have a drop bag and you've left yourself some like...
So around every 6 miles, there's a station. So if you like go to one station and you like didn't fix everything and you didn't really take care of yourself, you're lost for the another 6 miles.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, and there are different things, and it depends on the race, right? Like right now, the big thing is 200-mile races.
Yeah.
And those races, people actually sleep. And so there's like every 30 miles, there might be a sleep station. And every 20 miles, there might be an aid station. So you have to carry a lot more on those. You might have to carry for 10 hours on a 200-miler. Whereas on a 100-miler, it's rare you're going to go more than like an hour and a half without hitting another aid station. So you have to carry more. A lot of it's logistics and stuff.
It's heavy, right? It's like, how heavy could it be?
Well, I guess it depends. Water's the heaviest, right?
Yeah.
So if it's a hot race, I mean, the races I did this summer, and I can get to that, they were all really hot. And so you have to carry more water with you, and so every liter, every quart of water is 2 pounds. So, hour and a half, you might need to carry 2 quarts if it's a hot one. Plus, you might have a wind shirt and sunglasses and a little med kit and gels. You might be carrying 6 pounds.
Wow.
But again, there's the faster races, like the 50Ks, you won't be carrying much, like a water bottle. But like in 100 miles, you might be carrying a lot more.
Yeah.
You know,
And food and all of this stuff.
And so, yeah, so I learned over time. I've done, I don't know, maybe 3, 4 50Ks, maybe 3 or 4 50-milers, a couple 100Ks. And then I've hit 100 miles 15 times now.
Wow.
So,
That's good.
yeah.
That's good. 15 times 100 milers.
Yeah.
Wow.
Some of them, two of them, one of them was in what's called a backyard race. Have you heard about the backyards?
No.
Oh,
What
those
is
ones
that?
are awesome. I really want to get more into these. These are ones where you run a lap every hour, and the official backyards are 4.17 miles every hour. So it's pretty slow, right? It's like a 14-minute pace.
Yeah. It's like a circle path?
Yeah, it could be on trail, it could be on road, it could be an out and back.
Wow.
But you start and end at the same place. And then at the next hour, you better be at the start, and you keep on going. And you
This
just keep on going until nobody's left.
Is it called backyard?
It's called Last Person Standing, and it's called Big's Backyard because the guy who started it, it was like he named it after his dog, and it was in
Yeah.
his backyard.
Wow.
And that's still the world championship now. I mean, Harvey Lewis has I think he still has a world record, if not the American record. And last year he went 450 miles without ever more than a 5-minute break because you have to be back at the start line every hour.
But this is insane because you need to you're running at the same place all the time.
Yeah.
Like when you go maybe for like 100 miler, you see stuff, you see
Yeah,
mountains,
yeah.
you see animals, people. Here you're just like seeing the same stuff every time.
Well, the one you need to check out is called, there's a movie about it, and it's called The Race, I think, for Self-Transcendence. And it's this religious sect, I can't remember, but they're in New York City,
Yeah.
in Queens. But this guy started this race, it's become this famous race. And they do 3,100 miles, 3,100 miles around a single block in Queens. It takes about 5,500 loops of that block in Queens to finish the race.
Wow.
Yeah, and people are doing like 70 miles a day on these things. You know, I mean, they're pushing hard.
This is insane.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wanna circle back to your experience. This is insane, man. People are just like
I can
getting
talk
crazy.
about this till the
Yeah.
cows come home. Right? You got the one thing I can talk about. I'm glad my wife's not here because she's like, get it all out in the podcast. You don't have to talk about this at home.
You love that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a big part of your life. I mean, if I had run 100 milers, which I plan to do, I'll
Yeah.
never shut up about it. Like I'll keep reminding myself that I did it, at least for myself.
All right.
Because then you will be like, I can do now anything. It's like I'm unstoppable.
Exactly.
I can do whatever you want.
The feeling of empowerment, you know?
And you told me that when it comes to ultramarathons, it's not about the body anymore. It's not about how strong you are and how, the physical shape you're in. It's about the mind. Can you tell me more about that? Like when it becomes a mental race, is there a point at some point that it becomes only in your mind, and how much can you keep pushing? How do you feel in your ultramarathons? What was your first experience?
The first experience was grindstone, and I actually went down. My friend who's a
100
professor,
miler. No.
100 mile. I'm talking about hundreds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The first experience was the 50K, but the hundreds are the other races where you have to go through the night, right? Anything under 100K and lower, for the most part, you can do in a day.
Mm-hmm.
But anything over 100, I mean, the best
Yeah.
people don't go through the night, but all of us normal people have to run through the night, and so
Normal.
So the first one was the grindstone, and it was one of my how long did it take me? It was like 32 hours or something. It was torrential downpours the whole time, like raining almost the whole time, like super cold, late October in the mountains in Southern Virginia. My friend who's a professor here, we went down there and did it together. And it was he had already done 100, so I was sort of like learning off of him. He unfortunately made a wrong turn, had to DNF because it was an out and back, and he turned back too early. But anyways, so I made it through and was just like trashed. And it was actually election. It was like right before the election, 2016. That's right, because that's when like some stuff came out about Trump. I remember waking up there that morning. But anyways, I was pretty wrecked, but also really fired up. I mean, I had no idea that I could do 100. Like, it was so far beyond anything I'd ever done. And yeah, it was just like a new door had opened for me. And then getting into sort of the pain and the mental aspect, you know, I'm not a great athlete, but I think I'm really good at just continuing to push through things. And you're right, so much of it. And there's two sides of the mental thing. There's like the David Goggins side, and you and I talked a little bit about the David Goggins side. And, you know, David Goggins is a very polarizing figure in the ultra running community because, you know, he's like pretty hardcore, just like push yourself as hard as you can, where a lot of people are all about like love and support and, you know, empowerment and, you know, listening to your body. And anyways.
Well, some people, you know, some people really like go with what Goggins say. Like for me, for example, I really like this motivates me or helps me more than the support and the kindness and the love and let's push together for. So I guess like for some people it's very, very different.
Yeah, I think whatever it takes, right?
Yeah,
whatever it takes. And some people like, you know, for example, a lot of these ultra running, a lot of these races, you have a crew, right? And most of them I've done solo just because I have a wife and 2 kids, and she's not going to go with me. And
wow. Wait, hold on. That's a point. Your first 100-miler, you were married with kids?
My first 100 was, in fact, my son was 2.5, and my daughter had just been born.
You know, I had this conversation with my friend earlier, today actually, and I was like, listen, I met this guy, and he like runs ultramarathons, all this stuff, and he's like, he's probably single, right? I was like, no, he has kids. He was like, what? I was like, why are you surprised? And he just like told me about this being that it's like either very motivating or very just like dismotivating. Like, how was it? Like, was it a relationship? Like, was there a relationship between this and that you had a family?
Well,
like being a father.
I sort of joke, my running joke is that I got into ultra running because I no longer had time to go on my long hikes. So a hike that used to take me 100 miles used to take me a week. I better turn it into a day. And I got into fast packing, which is the other side of the thing, which we haven't even talked about. But I got into fast packing because I might want to do something that would take me a month, and now I need to do it in a week.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So that's sort of the joke. You know, my wife, she supports me in that she like understands how important this is to my mental health and physical health. It's become such a huge part of who I am. So I really try hard to not let it get in the way. And of course, like the whole family has to make sacrifices for me, just like I have to sacrifice my training to be a father, right?
Yeah.
Like there's sacrifices on all sides, you know. For example, I do a lot of my running. This may sound crazy, but like, especially in the winter or whatever, I'll do my running at 9:30 at night after I've put my kids to bed. I'll either go out or I'm a Celtics fan, I'll watch the Celtics game and just run on the treadmill, you know. So I'll do whatever I have to do to make it work. But certainly, like, I can't train as much as I want to, and I can't, you know, but I also, like, really value those times with my family and love it. And I love when they can see me. You know, one of the races I do every year and I'm on the committee for is the Vermont 100. Right here in Vermont, one of the oldest 100 miles. I'm in charge of making sure the course is actually marked correctly. I just joined the committee, and I love the race. I mean, I love the people there. I love the community. And I also love that, like, my parents can come watch, and my kids can come out and see me in the middle of a race, you know? But, like, running 100 is not a spectator sport. Like, nobody's gonna, like, you know what I mean?
Sit and watch you for like 30 hours.
Or they come to an aid station, they see me for 2 minutes, and then I'm off again and for another 5 hours. You know? But the crew part of it is sort of got a little off. I'm trying to remember why I got into the crew, but you know, they're a huge part of it, and they'll like help motivate you and that kind of stuff too. But yeah, that first one I didn't have a crew, and you sort of learn these tools. Oh, that's what it was about. Yeah, we were talking about like the David Goggins go.
Yeah.
And
now I understand what you mean.
Yeah,
with the like love and support, maybe.
Yeah, and the reason I brought this up is some people like want you to be like, go get it, like you can go harder, go. Like they want their crew to give them that.
Yeah.
Whereas some people be like, what do you need? How can I help you? Like, give them a hug and kisses, and like people want different things, right?
Nice.
And so at different times, I want different things. Sometimes I want the loving support, and sometimes I want someone to push me really hard.
God is yelling at your face. Just go.
Yeah. And this year, so I guess I'll move. Given that we have a somewhat limited time frame here, I sort of move on through my journey a little bit. Does that sound? So I should have brought my computer because I've been like keeping a track. But the other thing I got into was thinking about. And if you want to direct us at all, let me know if you feel like you want.
No, you're good.
Is what are called fastest known times. Have you heard about this?
No, what's that?
So this is a growing sort of interest and sort of corollary sport to
Fastest known time?
Yeah, FKTs. Everyone calls them FKTs, fastest known times.
What is that about?
They're speed records on trails.
Wow.
And so it's gotten very competitive. For example, a few weeks ago, Tara Dower just set the speed record on the Appalachian Trail, the one we were talking about.
How fast did they do it?
She did it. She broke the men's record, the overall record. And
Wow.
This is one of the really cool parts about ultra running is once the distances get really long, the women start to compete on a much more equal level with the men.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. And this woman, I mean, she's, but there's no way that she would ever beat the top man in a 100-miler, but in a 2,200-miler, and she had a great crew, everything. She finished in 40 days, 18 hours, so it was like 55 miles a day for 40 days straight, just so these people, there's a guy here, Will Peterson, he's a med student here.
Yeah.
And I interviewed him, and he interviewed me. There's a whole podcasting circle, but if you get a chance to interview him before he leaves,
I will.
He last year set the unsupported speed record on the Long Trail, which is a hiking trail from the border of Massachusetts to the border of Canada through Vermont.
Wow.
So it's 272 miles, very rugged, like 65,000 feet of climbing. And like, I'm getting back to this because I originally wanted to break that record, the unsupported record, which means carrying everything. And it was 6 days, 17 hours. Last year, Will did that in 4 days, 11 hours. And then this year, he just broke 4 days on the Long Trail. So he averaged, last year, unsupported, carrying everything from start to finish, he averaged 61 a day. This year, with help, he averaged 71 a day.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, on really rugged trail, like not on a road or anything.
Yeah, I can take your word for it. If you say it's a rugged trail, then I can't believe it. The fascinating thing is that, when you're running and you have this race, like the day is over, like, I don't know, you have like 24 hours. After that, it's going to be over. So you're kind of just like pushing all that you can. It's true. It's like for a long time frame. But when you're having to do it in like 7 days and just staying motivated, staying like consistent with it for 7 days, that's something.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
This
and
takes
there's like the multi-month one, like the AT and the PCT. Then there's like the multi-day one, like the Long Trail. And then there's other ones which are shorter, which would be like in New Hampshire, the Presidential Traverse is a really famous one over the biggest mountains in New Hampshire. And like that one's now down below 4 hours, and it's like, most people take 2 to 3 days type of deal.
Wait, when was the most recent 100 miles that you did?
Early September.
Oh, this year? Wow. That's good. How many? You told me something. You mentioned something about doing how many in the summer? Like
so
in
this year I did this classic ultra running challenge, which I was the 419th person to have done this challenge.
Wow.
And there's this very famous race called Western States.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can think it's like the Boston Marathon, where Boston is sort of the most famous marathon in the U.S. at least. This is the most famous U.S. 100-miler. And the cool thing about 100, I'll just sort of digress a little bit, is that unlike the Boston where the elites are lining up and they're going ahead and they almost have a different race, right?
Yeah.
Like, I could be lining up next to the best 100-miler in the world because we all start at the same start line. We all start together.
Yeah.
Because
I think
I won't see him again.
Yeah. But I think also because, like, when you get to a point where you're doing 100 milers, you're considered, like, how many people are in the, like, average race?
They're small, and that's the thing. A lot of these
That's
are
it.
limited by like permit issues, being able to use trails, and because you're on trail, you don't want to race with 2,000 people,
Yeah.
because
That's
you're stuck in a
chaos.
line, you know. So Western States, when I was talking about, limits it to like 350.
350 people.
Yeah,
That's still a lot.
yeah. And some of those are taken by like winners of golden tickets. The top 10 men and women are invited back the next year. But for those of us to have to qualify, every year we have to run a 100-miler to qualify for that race. Then we put our name into a lottery for a lottery ticket to run the race. And then if we don't get selected, we still have to qualify the next year, but we get to put in twice as many tickets. So at Grindstone, that first race I ran in 2016 was my first qualifier.
Yeah.
And I finally ran it this year in 2024. It took me that long to get into
Wow. How many
it.
years?
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah. So because that race took so long for me to get into, it was a really big event. And it's the most, there's it's just incredible. It's a big like festival. And so we took the kids and we drove out there and whatever. But because I got into that race, I decided to do what's called the Grand Slam, and where you do 4 of the original 500-milers. So and that was the challenge for the year. So the first weekend in June, I ran Old Dominion 100. Then the last weekend in June, I ran Western States 100. And then 3 weeks later, I ran Vermont 100. And then I had 7 weeks until Wasatch 100. And Wasatch is the one where all of the Grand Slammers run it. And that's out in Utah.
So in the last summer, like in that summer, you've ran.
So I ran 400 in a 14-week
Nice.
span. So
Wow.
it was a good summer. It was pretty sweet.
How did you like recover? How did you train?
There's not a lot of training, to be quite honest. I trained in the winter, and I ran a marathon. I ran my second marathon ever. Just wanted to like see if I could qualify for Boston or whatever. And I was pretty psyched. Like I ran like a 3:05, which for 46 is, for someone that doesn't run fast, it meant that I really worked hard to get there.
Yeah.
And usually I set myself up for, being really fit, and then I'll get into the trail season. And at that point, this year it was like run Old Dominion and then just hang on for dear life, basically. It's usually, I'd say, 10 days to the point where your body feels pretty recovered. But it can be a lot longer to where your central nervous system is recovered. So, like, you might feel fine and you go out for a run, and all of a sudden you're running 9-minute miles, and you used to do that at 125 beats per minute, and now you're at 145. Like, it's just your body hasn't recovered yet.
Yeah.
So the key is just like eating a lot, moving, keep on moving. And if you can get some training in, great. Like, for Wasatch, I was able to get training in because I had 7 weeks.
Yeah.
But for the second and third, it was really just hanging on. Plus, I was traveling around the country, with my kids. And
Wow.
so,
That's insane, man.
just had to do what I had to do. But it was an incredible experience, and one of my good friends joined me for 3 of them, and he crewed me. His 17-year-old daughter paced me for the final 45 miles at Western States. My friend, who I said joined me for that first 100-miler, who's a professor here, he joined me for the final 30 at Vermont 100. So I've got to share the experience with a lot of people this year, and that was like so much of the time it's like me going to the race, like sleeping next to my car, like running the race, driving home. And it was really cool to like have this one be a real part. And my dad joined me for a couple of these races too.
That's
which was
nice.
Awesome.
That is nice, man.
So-
Having all of this, also people seeing you going through the pain, like you can do it, and
Yeah.
you know you can do it, and you have proof, and you proved yourself. But I want to ask you, tell me about your failures in those races, like the dark moments, the moments where you're like, why am I doing this? What the hell am I doing?
They I guess failures is a hard. I think my failures have more come so they're sort of learning experiences,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So there's legitimate failures, and I've not finished a couple races. My first Vermont 100, I DNF'd, which means did not finish. I was working on a book, and there was a number of reasons why. And then I did DNF a 50K because I was really sick, and I just but those aren't failures. They're just, I'd say my biggest learning experiences was like the long trail, for example. The long trail speed record, I think I mentioned, it was 6 days, 17 hours. So I think I had to average like 40 a day or something. And I went out there and like, I think 2017 was my first attempt, and just like blew up like immediately, like a day into it.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like I wasn't making my miles. I couldn't move. And I'd put so much thought and effort into that thing. And I just felt like, geez, I can't even make it a day. How can I make it 7 days on this thing? And, but like, you know, at that point, I didn't really know much about training. Like I didn't really like, you know, I've had coaches since then, and that's been really helpful. And I've actually taken a course. I'm about to start to be a running coach very soon.
Nice.
But at the time, you know, I just didn't really know much about nutrition or whatever. But so I was pretty bummed out, you know, and yet I was like, I'm going to try it again. And so like I tried again the next year and totally fail again. I did finish that year, but it took me like 8.5 days. And I actually ran out of batteries. So my parents had to come and give me like 2 batteries for my headlamp, which all of a sudden makes it supported, right? So there's sort of these different categories. There's supported, where you can get as much help as you can. Self-supported, which means you can pick up food along the way, but nobody's helping you. And then unsupported means if you didn't start with it, you can't get help. So, you know, so you're carrying all your food for, you know, and I can talk about the Iceland trip if you want to, but, you know, you're carrying all your food for the whole way. So, like, you know, I had packed enough food for 6 days, 17 hours, and it took me 8.5 days. And so I ran out of food, and I did the last 70 miles on less than 2,000 calories. Wow. You know, it was basically nothing, like nothing at all. And so, like, yeah, I failed in that I was nowhere near the record time. And I tried again 2 years later, and I never got the long trail record. I tried 3 times for that record. But every single time I learned something from it. And I think that's what draws me back to it, is like, you know, it's not a challenge if it's easy.
Yeah.
And if you succeed 100% of the time, then it's not really a worthwhile challenge, is it?
No.
Right?
No, it's not.
You know, so it validated the fact that I was doing something really difficult. And even though I was never successful in that one, I still felt like I gained a lot of knowledge and worth and understanding about myself and understanding about what I love. You know, when I think back to that final 70 miles with no food, the record had already gone away. I was just doing it for myself.
Wow.
And, you know, I dug so deep then, and I felt miserable. Like, the thing about the hardest part about the long trail when you're hiking south is that the end of it is the Massachusetts-Vermont state line, but it's still about 3 miles to the trailhead. And so you give everything to get to the finish, and then you still have to hike out 3 miles. Wow. And that's like the hardest 3 miles you've ever done your whole life. And like my buddy met me there with like a liter of Coke, a foot-long sub, and a bag of Doritos. And I like downed that whole thing in like 5 minutes, wow. You know.
But man, this is a huge win actually. When you're running and all of this miserable stuff started happening, and then you know that that's it. I'm like, I lost it. I'm not with the record. Many people would stop there because that's it. They tried, they failed. You kept going. Why?
I think I had invested so much in it. You know the record's gone before the time hits, right? Like,
yeah.
By day 3, you're already behind. And you sort of have to think about, like, what are you there to discover what you can't do, or are you there to discover what you can do, right?
Nice.
Like, I wanted to see what I could do, and even if it wasn't, as good as this person who I looked up to, who set the record, and now the record's half of what it took me to do it, I still hiked the long trail carrying everything I need and did it like 35 miles a day or whatever it was. Like, it was still a decent effort. And so the 2 times that I did quit wasn't because I wasn't going to get the record. It was because I was like wrecked. Like, I just couldn't. I was done. I'd pushed myself a little too hard. And then you talk about the sort of failures within a race. And I'll go back to like this whole idea of learning and wisdom and how important that is for being successful at ultramarathon running, because once you've experienced something, that's a possibility. And one thing that happened to me this year, so there's those 2 DNFs I had, and they were both in 2017. Since 2017, I finished every race I've done. Not often, very close to the finish line. Western States, when I was telling you about, I was 16 minutes before cutoff. Like, it was incredible because there they celebrate that, and the whole stadium is filled with people. My family's there, and they have you up on the big screen, and it's on YouTube, and everyone's watching from all over the country. So it's like, it's pretty cool. Like, they celebrate those people in the golden hour who are finishing. But it was hard. Like, I gave every last thing. And sorry, I lost my track. What was it?
The question?
Yeah.
So, forget the question. You really took me by... So I asked about the failures and how do you feel and all this stuff, but I really love the sentence that you just said. Are you there to discover what you can't do, or are you there to discover what you can do? And this is just really pushing yourself to the limits. I really love that sentence. I think this summarizes what really the extreme running is about and why people go to distance. Distance isn't easy. This is like next level stuff. Like, you can't just wake up and be like, you know what, I want to do that. Many people try to do it. I think many people find success in it, and many don't. And I would ask you, what is there? Like, what's there for the people who are finding success in it? I'm not sure what I'm saying is right, but I also believe many people try to run these stuff and they fail and they just stop. And they can't do it. They just give up and they're like, okay, I didn't do it. What do you think is common between people who actually push themselves to do so? Is it like, I don't know, negative motivation, positive motivation? Is like sounds, is like, ooh.
It's a good question.
What's
and
in there?
And I do remember what we were talking about. I was talking about the, well, anyways, we'll go to this one.
Yeah.
That's a good question. And a lot of the people you meet out there are people who, for example, who are like recovering addicts.
What? Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have been through some really traumatic things in their lives.
Yeah.
And, the addiction thing is like, it kind of makes sense because
They're addicted to running.
right. They replace a bad habit with a good habit. It's actually a very, very common story out there.
Interesting.
The one thing I will say, I think, to be successful at this is you have to love the process, right? Because the races are a couple days a year, but you're out there running every single day, and like you're running even when you don't want to be out there. Like, you don't think you want to be out there, but like almost every single time that I don't want to go for a run, once I'm out there running, like, I'm so happy I went.
Yeah.
Right? Like, nothing brings me more joy than just like running around through the woods, like.
Yeah. Even if you don't feel like it. That's actually always what I tell my friends. Like, you will never regret a workout.
Yeah.
You're just like, go for it, even if you don't want to.
The hardest part is like making that step to do it.
Yeah.
Right? But like once you're there, whether it's lifting or whatever, you're in it. I'm not saying it's always fun. It's not always fun.
Yeah, definitely.
But like, if you're not in it for the process, then the races don't matter at all. Right? Like, there has to be something bigger and more important about it. And for me, it's like, I'm happier when I'm fitter. Yeah. I love spending time in nature. I love challenging myself. I love the time to either listen to podcasts and music or to just be in my own head and think. I love, seeing what I'm made of. Like all those things, right? Like,
I want to ask you, sorry, I need to cut you off. I really want to ask you. You always hear people saying all of this deep stuff. Like, I want to see what I'm made of. I want to see how far I can go. Tell me, what does that mean? Like, how do you feel? What do you feel?
yeah.
Do you even run with like music on, music off? Like, do you have like this conversation in your head with yourself?
Yeah. It's a good question. I do run. I do listen to a lot of things. Certainly, it's just a chance to sort of disconnect. And sometimes I just don't even want to be in my head. I just want to be like spacing out. But yeah, sometimes it really is a chance for self-discovery. And, it's like when you're talking about the races, it really is like, what are you made of, right?
Yeah.
For the training, it's like, what are you made of? Like, are you willing to get out there 6 days a week to run? Like, and are you gonna do the extra stuff, the lunges and squats and, foam rolling and all that kind of stuff? Are you gonna watch what you eat? Like, do you care about that enough to live your life in a way? And I'm not perfect at it by all means, but like, I think about all those things, and then I think different people need different things to discover who they are. And I think some people find it through art or through music, right? And some people find it through extreme, like base jumping and, doing crazy tricks out on the ski slopes. And for me, what does it is just endurance, right? It's just going as far and as hard as and as long as you can, like, and that's why that stuff, and that's why, like, I can go to talk about the Iceland trip a little bit. A couple of years ago, I tried to set an FKT. I did. It's since been broken a lot, but to walk across Iceland from north to most northern point to most southern point, carrying everything I needed for the whole trip.
Wow.
So I started with a 65-pound pack, and it was 375 miles.
375 miles.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like, I just wanted to see, like, did I have enough food? Like, could I keep on getting up every day and, doing all that stuff? And like, I was really curious to see, like, was this even possible for me? And for a lot of people, it's way more possible. Like, it's just about finding your limits, and I think what I want to continue to like, to reiterate is that I'm not a special athlete. I'm not a special person. Like, I was a very average athlete in high school. Like, I was in the middle of the team. In college, yes, I raced, but I raced on the development team and, but find what it is that you're passionate about and you're going to be the best at that thing. And like, for me, it was just about the longer I went, the better I felt. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times I don't feel warmed up till I hit mile 10. And for a lot of people, they'd rather just run a really fast mile and like find what that is. But I think, like, when you're talking about sort of discovering yourself through this, a lot of it is like discovering that process and what brings you that joy, and like, for me, the joy is in all those things I was talking about, and the joy is in the suffering too, and, I know we talked a little bit about your background, not too much, but, I know there's real suffering going on out there. And like, I know that all the suffering that I go through in one of these races is purely self-created, right? So there's never that sense of like, my life is at stake, right? In a way. So like, I just need to make that clear. Like, I'm digging deep, but I always know that I'm safe, but this sort of gives me a chance to sort of get close to feeling what it is when like everything's going wrong and I still got to go forward, you know? And like maybe dealing with this type of adversity helps me deal with the adversity in the rest of my life. You know, there's a lot of adversity in parenting.
Yeah.
You know, my kids don't agree with everything I say. You know, I was a little late here today because the kids are off of school. My wife is at work, and I had to like, you know, get them settled. But I do think like there's whatever those limits are for you, whatever they are, like people say like, oh, like, you know, he died doing what he loves, and like, you hate to see that when someone does something like that. But also, I truly understand that probably that person that did what they loved, it was so important to them that it really made them a lot of who they were.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't really know how to, like, bring this all back together, but, like, you know, just, it's all part of the same thing, right? Like, I guess that's what I'm trying to talk about is, like, we're just all regular people, and we're putting the pieces together, and, like, nothing is ever perfect, and yet, like, there are ways that we can challenge ourselves to make ourselves better, and this is how I do it.
Interesting. What is the thing that you say to yourself when you're running and you're at mile 70, mile 80, and just you can't keep going? What is it that you say? Because I'm trying to find, like, for example, for the parenting, the fact that you have a family, is it involved? Like, again, what do you say to yourself? And is it related to your family? Like, did this mental challenging self thing start after your family, or is it like non-related?
It's a good question because it did start, right? Like my first ultra happened, 2015, let's see. So my son was born, my daughter hadn't been born yet. So definitely overlap with that. And I think it was sort of like this sense that like I was entering this new stage in life and I was no longer this like young, fancy free. I couldn't just do whatever I wanted to do. And so how would I sort of find a new way to explore while out without, but I don't know if that was a conscious decision. I think it just sort of went that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as far as like what I think about a mile 70, I mean, it really varies. And, like I said, sometimes mile 70 could be the best part of the race.
Yeah.
But when things are really bad, a lot of what I do, like, well, all these races, I mean, every single one this summer was there were points where it would have been so easy to quit. Like, not all my races have been that hard, but this summer they were all really hard. And the worst part for me was this final race, the Wasatch 100, and it's super hot. It's at altitude. It's in this, very exposed, meaning you're in the sun all day, so there's no trees to shade you. And
Yeah.
I got to like mile 35 and like I was cramping so bad, like full body cramping, like not just like my calf or like every part was hurting. I was probably very dehydrated. It's hard to like process what's going on, but I waited and like got through that and went on to the next section. And then like 2 miles after that, I just fell on the ground and I couldn't move.
Wow.
Like, you ever get those cramps on your feet at night that are like excruciating?
Yeah.
Imagine having that in like every muscle in your body. Like I couldn't even grab my pole. I couldn't even turn over.
Wow.
Like I was stuck on the ground in the middle of the trail.
Did you have people around you? Like,
I mean, nobody that I knew, but there were still runners.
Yeah, so
By this point, I was like towards the back of the pack already. I was already hours behind where I thought I should be. And full body cramping. And this is mile 40, right? Like I have 60 miles to go. And I took a video of it. Like you watch like my muscles just like rippling. You know what I mean? Like, like so painful. And people are like, "Can I help you up?" And like one guy tried to help me and like didn't work. I probably had 40 people just step over me and they just kept on running.
wow.
Yeah. I was there for like over half an hour. Like I couldn't move. And I finally got out my phone and I was able to text my crew. And this guy had offered to come pace me, and he was going to meet me there. And I was like, I'm quitting. And it felt so bad because I had done the first 3 races. This was like a 4th race. This was like everything. But I could not imagine, like at that point in time, it was so hard for me to imagine what it would be like. Like, how could I keep on going? My whole body's cramping. But you know what? Like half an hour later, I got up and I started slowly walking. And then these 2 other Grand Slammers came, and but in this 4th race, all of us that are doing all 4 races, we're sort of in the back because we're all tired from the previous 3 races. For most people, they do 100 in a year, or 2 maybe. And started following them, and I didn't have a headlamp, and it was getting dark, and this guy lent me his headlamp. And I got there, and I never said another word about the DNF, and somehow just kept on walking. And by this point, I was also throwing up. So like that's the other issue with most of these races is your stomach turns, and so you eat until you can't eat. Some of these races, I've literally not put down a drop of water or food for like 25 miles, the final 25 miles. It's just like
dangerous.
It's very, you can get what's called a rhabdo. You can get super dehydrated. But I was able to trickle in a little bit and was walking, and then eventually started running and came back through it, like learned, like, that was the only time I'd ever told anybody I was quitting in a race. And then I immediately, like, because I had that knowledge of being like, you know what, it doesn't only always get worse. That's sort of that's a quote from Dave Horton, who's like this early pioneer in ultra running, and he actually teaches a college class, which is ultra running, and his students get their final exam is to run a 50K.
Wow.
It's at some like super like very, very Christian school in the deep South. But so got through, he says it's like, it doesn't always only get worse, you know? And like in your mind, you're like, how can it not keep on getting worse? But like, I got through that and kept on going.
And it got better.
And eventually, it still finished near the back of the race, but like, it's another one of these like learning experiences. Like you think everything is done and you're not done.
Yeah.
Right. I sort of lost track of where we started with that one, but like, that's my most recent example. And it's like so powerful to me because I've never once said I was quitting. And in this race, I sent a text to my crew saying I'm quitting. And then I was like, if I can get up and put one foot in front of the other, I basically told them at the beginning of the race, I said, the only way I'm quitting is if they pull me off the race. And the reason they'd pull you is if, like, they have these certain time limits. You have to hit the aid stations in certain times or they pull you. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to lie to them. Like, this is what I told them. And
Own it.
Yeah. And so I just was like, I'm going to keep on walking. And then I'm a very slow runner, but I'm a very fast walker. Often in the end of these races, I'm walking faster than most people are running.
Yeah. Wow.
Especially on hills, So I just leaned into that and, came through. Yeah. Anyways, that's that. But it was a real learning experience for me. Just I had done 14 other hundreds, and yet it was this one, and I'm like, I can't get through. I spent everything. I flew out there. I don't fly very much, and I was just it was incredible. But like,
Yeah, definitely don't fly. You run, I guess.
So, and I hope you always want your kids to be interested in what you're doing, and so I'm trying to get them into running. We just ran the Chad 5K together, and we've signed up for a trail race at the skiway. We did it last year.
How old are your kids right now?
8 and 10.
8 and 10. And they're running. Nice.
Yeah. I mean, not a lot. They run a lot. They do soccer and all that kind of stuff.
That's nice.
But I'm trying to get them into this.
That's
and
interesting.
there's a cool race. And I don't know, are you going to be here over the break?
I'm not sure yet, but hopefully not.
Okay.
I want to go back see my family, but
yeah.
I need also to start pacing myself for this stuff. It's very like I love running, but I have a different thing about running because I've never run in my life. But then I was like, I had this friend who played soccer very well, and we always like used to challenge challenge each other. I challenged him in the gym, and he challenged me in running. And then I was like, I've never run in my life. And then one day I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna run. I'm gonna show you. I can run more than you. Then I ran for 5 minutes and almost passed out. But I kept doing that every day until now I go for. So when we have when we're going to see my friend or stuff like that, I pull the goggins and I just go running there.
Nice.
I don't go by car. I don't love that.
That's awesome.
So sometimes, I do love that. And when when I was a teenager and used to work in a restaurant, I used to finish and sometimes go from my restaurant back to my home at 2 in the morning, and the manager would see me and he was like, "What the fuck are you doing? Do you need someone to pick you up?" I'm like, "No, I'm running." And you're like,
That's
"Do you
awesome.
want to do this to yourself?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I'd be have
So you've had that drive for a long
Yeah.
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That's
And
interesting.
also on my birthdays, I used to do this long runs. Well, they're
Okay.
not long compared to you, but for me, they were breaking records for myself.
Would you do your age or whatever?
Yeah, exactly that. And as you said, there's something about the distance. There is something about increasing the number every time. The more the number, the better the feeling is. No matter how of a bad experience it could be, it's just amazing to have this, to know that,
Yeah.
to know that you can do that.
And you talked a little bit earlier about seeing other people do things and how that
Yeah.
can sort of inspire you. And the one thing I always like to see is when I see these people win these races in a 100-mile race, Western State's that really famous one. I think the record is 14 hours and some odd minutes, Jim Walmsley. But my feeling is okay, can I be 50% of Jim Walmsley, right? Can I be half as fast as this guy is? Well, if he gets faster and I'm half as fast as he is, then that means I'm faster. And so there really is this idea of when I watch people do transcendent performances, when I watched Will break this long trail record, it made me feel like there was more that I could do.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, you become
Even if I'm
self-aware.
half as good as Will, my half is now better than it used to be. So I really, really do take a lot of inspiration out of watching people do things that I thought were previously impossible. And I hope that people can see me, someone who's just a regular guy in their 40s and a dad with a job
And a photographer.
and a photographer, and a
And
writer. I
lots
do a
of
lot of
things,
stuff,
yeah.
but that I can still do something that people think is exceptional, and hopefully that makes them feel that they can do something that's exceptional.
Well, you know what? For me, it's a bit different, and I think this is the case for many people. Some people get pissed off at themselves. Are why can't I do that? They get this challenge sort of thing, and it's very good because the more the age goes, and I remember you telling me that the older people get, the crazier they get on this stuff. The more they want to run. It's most of the runners, they're old, right? They're not 20s. They're in the 40s.
I mean, yeah, I would say if you did the average race of a 100-mile race, it would probably be low 40s. Yeah, would be the average age.
That's interesting.
But because so much of it is people that moved on from marathon running and they wanted to see more, or people whose speed is slowed down but they still have the endurance, right? My days of running a fast mile on the track are gone. I shouldn't say gone. Fast is relative because I've never really trained for it. But I'm 46 years old, right?
Yeah.
I'm not getting faster without a lot of effort. But I can maintain a pace for a long period of time. And if I increase that, if I can go from a 9-minute, in 100, it might be 13-minute pace. If I can do a 13-minute pace and now do a 12:30, well, half a minute times 100 is 50 minutes. I've just cut off my race.
Yeah.
That's a big improvement,
It is.
right? So I think that's why the people that are older. And it's that, and it's this knowledge, this wisdom, this understanding. And like, there's also just like, we love it. I love it. It's so much fun.
It's very weird because you think of it, and me as a teenager, at least as like 20 years old, I look at the average 40 years old, and I think like they think that that's it, they're done. Like they did what they did, and now they're living based on their actions, and these are the outcomes. You, on the other hand, and many other people are just no, like we keep going. Like Goggins is like 50 something. I don't know how old is he.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know, 56. Maybe less, maybe more.
He's in his 50s for
Yeah,
sure.
it's insane. It's like the people I know that are in their 50s, they barely can move. This takes a lot of determination that builds up and sticks to that old age.
Yeah.
It's fascinating for me. And it really like...
And the fitness too. It's, you know, the one thing about endurance is it's a very long, it's brick on top of brick on top of brick on top of brick. It's not... You're not going to train to do well in 103 months. You might train to do well in 103 years. And truthfully, all of my 10 years of running affected how the summer went, right? Like, it's all this huge base aerobic, you know, build. You know, I run on average about 2,000 miles a year. And so over... you know, the past 10 years, it's close to 20.
Yeah.
Probably done 15 to 20,000. Then the other thing I will say, I know, do we have to get out of here or not quite yet? The other thing I will say is that you talked about, like, running home from your job and, you know, just...
Yeah.
And I think one thing, when you're an ultra runner, you realize, like, so much of it is, like, time on feet. Just, like, can you be on your feet and moving nonstop, no matter how fast you're going? And so I really take that into my life, and I'm a big junkie with my watch and steps. So I might say, okay, I only ran 6 miles today, but I also walked 7 miles today. And so I think of that all as contributing to my overall fitness. I don't know if you're like, you know, the zones, but like there's like zone 1 through 5 in the aerobic fitness, and zone 1 is like super low level, but the lower zones build up this sort of like mitochondrial power and this capillary density, and like walking for hours helps your ability to run, which helps your ability to do hard workouts, which helps your ability to perform. You know what I mean? So it's all part of it. Like I was talking about the nutrition and stuff. So like that instinct to like run home, like that's exactly what you need. You know, I think I've like I will not take an elevator, like ever.
Yeah, I mean, same.
Unless like if I'm carrying a huge box or
like
something.
20,
yeah. But like, why? Right?
Yeah.
It's just as easy to carry stairs. And like now over the years, I've done
it builds up
15,000 more sets of stairs than other people have.
And it becomes a habit. Exactly. That's the thing, the habit. And you know, I want to circle back to what you said about running from the job, for example. For me, this was crazy. Like finishing, I had a crazy day. Okay, I had that like several times a week, and every weekend on the hardest shift, where I'd be like working for, I don't know, like many hours nonstop, and I had a workout. I had work before and like all of the stuff. Going to run, like, what are you? This doesn't even came to, like, it didn't come to my mind at all. But then I was like, you know what? It's insane. I want to do it.
There you go.
And then it opens up a whole new door. It's like becomes, I'm going to run to my home. Then I am going to run to my friend's home, which is double the distance.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to run like 4 times the distance. It's insane. And I think this is momentum. Yeah. The more you do hard stuff, the more it gets better, and the harder stuff you can keep doing.
Right.
And this is the pattern that we see in like more successful people. It's you can start small, you can start big, doesn't matter, but it's start.
Right.
You just have to start.
Yeah. That's it, right? That's what we're talking about, whether it's just go do your workout or like climb the set of stairs that you wouldn't have climbed before. Right?
I love that.
Just get out there and, you know, do something you wouldn't have done. And that's when you like, I think, you know, people fall into these ruts, right? And I think it's like anything you can do to sort of get yourself out of those ruts. So I think that's why a lot of people sign up for runs, right? They do something that forces them to do a change. I think, when we talk about the races are really there for motivation.
Yeah.
For, because you want to put all that hard work to something, but it's not about the race always. I mean, the race is important, don't get me wrong. But when you finish a 100-miler, you get a belt buckle. That's what you win. So I have
That's nice.
13 belt buckles. I want to get
Yeah.
some, but I don't do it for the belt buckle.
Yeah, you do it for the process.
I don't even have enough belts.
Nice.
So I think that's why you just got to start.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot that we can learn from each other, and I think it's the same way with I think about music, right? Like people practice music. It sucks to learn in the beginning, but once you get good at it, so much more opens up to you. And when you were saying, oh, your friend's house is twice as far, one of the cool things when I started ultra running was I used to be oh my God, I got to go out for a 5-mile run. And now I'm oh, that's what is it? That's 15 miles. Let me see. I got 2.5 hours. I can go there. That's not a problem. It's never amount of distance, It's just amount.
It's there to do it.
Yeah. So it just makes you, everything else, there's so much more possibilities, right? Yeah, it's fun to think about. I do that all the time. I'm can I run back from there? Or is it going to be too dark or whatever,
Yeah.
So
That's nice. I love that.
that's awesome. Well, we'll have to go out for a run together sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. And a hike, I think, while you're up here, you should take advantage of where you live, because I think what got me into running and hiking was just the White Mountains of New Hampshire. They're so inspiring. They're above tree line. And then once you do that, you're oh, well, a lot of people that don't like hiking don't like it because it's hard physically. But once you get over that hump, it all becomes so much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And you can take a second to look around, and all that.
Enjoy it. Nice. So being a photographer, great father, definitely, and an ultra marathon runner, that's insane. I love that.
Well,
Do you
thank
have anything, last thing to say as a summarization? If you would give someone advice, give me a very neat advice of the 46 years of experience you had. Running, parenting, taking photos.
I mean, it's going to sound, everything sounds so cliche because it's always been done before.
But it's real.
But, when I was at Dartmouth, I was a geography major. Not because I wanted to become a geographer, because it interested me, right?
Yeah.
And then I was at Moosilauke, and I discovered just where I felt most myself was in the mountains, and helping other people appreciate the mountains, through my photography. I didn't own a camera in college, right? I didn't know what I was going to do. I never took a class in photography. I became a full-time photographer, I wasn't a good runner. And now ultra running is such a huge part of my life. And so I feel it's so easy when you're 20 to think about what you're doing now is going to define your future. And it's not. I think you just need to be open to new experiences, and it will all add to you, what you end up choosing to do. But you do so much stuff, I can tell. You take 4 classes, and you're doing the podcast, and you're doing the fitness and the social media, and but all of that is going to inform who you become and what you want to do. And it does sound cliche to follow your joy, but I got into a consulting job, and I learned it is really important to learn what you don't want to do too. So if you're in a job that you don't like, that's important to know, right? It's very easy to say, maybe you're an econ major at Dartmouth and you want to go into finance, and you put all of your effort to get selected by the best finance, I don't even know, bank or whatever, which is a path that a lot of Dartmouth students take. And there's a good chance that you're going to make more money in your first year than I've made in my last 10. But is that what you want to do? And wouldn't it suck to put your whole identity into something and get there and realize that that's not what brings you fulfillment, and it very may well bring you fulfillment, but like listen to it and say, you know what, like if this isn't it, what is it, and try new things. And like, you know, I was willing to try photography, and then I just did a book, and then I left my job and did other books, and then because of that, I got the job here, and I was a Dartmouth College photographer for 11 years here, and I learned so much, and then I left and went back out on my own, and, you know, had I not put myself out there and just followed my passion for photography, I never would have found my profession, right? Because it wasn't like the classes I took, it wasn't things I did. And if I thought of myself like, oh, I'm not a good runner, would I have ever tried ultramarathon running? Like, no. Try it, and it might become a big part of your thing. And I think like the next step in my life, what I'm hoping is to transition to helping people become better runners and hikers and fast packers, and becoming a coach, still keeping photography a big part of my life, but like, it's so easy to think, oh, you're 46 years old, like your career is set and this is what you're doing. And what I hope is like 20 years from now, I'm doing something different and exciting. And 20 years from then, when I'm 85, I hope I'm doing something different and exciting. And like, the older you get, the more life you realize there is to live. And like, all the best life is not when you're young. You know, take advantage of it because you have all this energy and this passion. And you know, this health and this fitness, but like, just follow, like, be excited about the journey and follow it. And like, what you're doing now, I guarantee you, is not what you're going to be doing 20 years from now. I'm granted you're a student, so of course, unless you're a full-time student forever, which my grandfather tried to do. He kept on going back to school forever and ever and ever. But
that's nice.
So, you know, it's very cliche and it's not concrete, but like, you know, you're less than half my age, and I'm really excited for you because you have so much ahead. You're in a great place with a lot of support, around a lot of great people, and I can clearly tell you're like a really special individual with a lot of motivation and some really deep way of thinking about things that is about beyond your years. And, you know, so I know you're going to make the most of it, but just understand that like, all the things that you expect to happen won't happen, and just take those, and those are going to help inform who you are. Just like all the horrible things that happen to me in the middle of a race make me a better runner and make me more prepared for the next race I'm going to do.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, man.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.
This was great.
Right. Thank you, guys. This was Eli.
Hope you all got a really good look at my bald spot. The one thing I do really miss is your head of hair. Oh my goodness.
Right. We'll see you guys in the next episode, and thank you so much for watching us. See you. Wow, man.